Welcome to week 2 of Candidate Voices with 5051 Savannah, a series that brings you 5-minute interviews with candidates for Georgia's 1st Congressional District, U.S. House Election 2026. We welcome any candidates running for this office who meet our mission of upholding the Constitution and ending executive overreach to participate. Each of our candidates receives the same question in advance, and all are allowed to prepare. This week, 2 of our candidates had unavoidable scheduling conflicts. We hope they'll join us again next week. This question is for Randy Zurcher. Welcome, Randy.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Our question tonight: tourism, ports, and agriculture are economic drivers in coastal Georgia, but many workers still struggle with low wages and unstable employment. What steps will you take in Congress to support small businesses, promote fair wages, and diversify the district's economy?
Okay. First of all, thanks again for having me. Let me do this again. This is great. Before I get an answer to the question, I want to give you just a little bit of background about me. I came up a little bit hard on in the suburbs of Oklahoma City, in a little town called Spencer, a single parent household. My mom would buy a gallon of milk and she would pour half of it out into a separate jug and freeze that, and then mix dry milk and add it to the other to make it stretch further. I thought everybody did that, and apparently, apparently they don't. So just know that I'm coming from a place. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like to never feel like you have enough. And I think it's criminal that we have such riches that we have in this country, and there are still people who are going hungry and homeless. So, but to get to the actual question, thanks for letting me do that. When it comes to supporting small businesses and local entrepreneurs, one thing about starting up a small business, you can't really do it without capital. You have to have some startup money. So one thing I want to do is make access to capital easier for entrepreneurs. One way to do that would be to expand the federal microloan program that they do through the Small Business Association. And of course, you'd want to focus on rural areas and also just any underserved communities in the district. Um, Another thing we can do is cut red tape. Red tape burdens local small businesses. At the same time, we can close loopholes that favor the big corporations and give them an unfair advantage. Kind of level the playing field in that way. We can invest in business incubators, especially for minority-owned businesses, for women-owned businesses. I think that would be a big help. We can also create federal incentives to keep sourcing and hiring local for any companies that are doing business here, and keep that money in local in District 1. Now, when it comes to promoting fair wages and worker protections, this is something I feel like I do just about every day in my capacity as a local representative for the teachers union here in the Savannah Chatham Public Schools. I will continue to fight for workers if I'm elected. One thing I want to do is fight for a living wage. And when I say that, I don't mean a minimum wage. I mean an actual living wage. Nobody who works full time in District 1 should be stuck in poverty. It's ridiculous. Another thing I want to do is pass the PRO Act. This on a federal level protects workers and their rights to organize, to have collective bargaining. There is a reason why it's against the law for public employees in the state of Georgia to have collective bargaining. And that reason is the bosses and the Republican legislature that is owned by the bosses, they figured out early on how powerful we can be, we meaning workers, when we work together. When we collectively bargain, our contracts get better. We get better pay and better benefits. So I want to do that on a federal level. The other thing we should do is ensure wage transparency and enforcement of existing labor laws, especially for tipped workers, especially for agricultural laborers who many times don't get those worker protections. Um, and when it comes to diversifying and modernizing the economy, there are several things I think we can do. We can expand clean energy and climate resilience jobs. Now, that would include um, solar energy, installation, any kind of weatherization, coastal restoration, especially in flood-prone areas in District 1. We could also grow regional food systems so our food can be a little more local. We can support agricultural co-ops. We can also support farm to school programs to keep that stuff local a little more. Um, we can develop workforce training partnerships between community colleges, unions, and employers to focus on emerging technologies like logistics tech, like green building, like sustainable aquaculture. So there are quite a few things we can do. Don't let them tell you it's about money. It's really about priorities, and the money will be there if the billionaires pay their taxes. Thanks again. Please go to Randy for Georgia. That's the number 4 for more information. And thanks again for letting me speak to you. I'll see you next time.